How to choose the right reading method for your kid. There's actually only two methods of teaching anyone to read. One is you actually teach them the sounds of the letters and letter combinations, like AI goes A usually, or you teach them to memorize the whole word or guessing at the word. So it's just really two ways. Every other way is just combinations, any new way that you hear of, because they're always coming out with new ways and they sound really good, but they're just really combinations of the two. Sometimes just more of this, sometimes more of this. But really, bottom line is there's just two ways to teach anybody to read. Phonics is the method of teaching where you teach them the individual sounds or letters that combine to make one sound, etc., etc. So you're teaching them the breakdown of the words so they can decode that word themselves. Now here's an example, phonics, right? If they've learned the sounds of the letter and they're starting to blend, they can actually go Bob, right? They can sound these out. So once they've got this really well and they can read the book, like I would start adding in consonants like fast. I would just keep the vowel sounds the same until they really, really get those, and just start adding consonants like camp and fast, add more like branch, and making them bigger and bigger. Then you start adding in the extra vowel combinations like AI goes A as in chain or train. Boy is a word that is commonly in really early reader books. I think the thought process on that is it's a 3-letter word. How hard could it be, right? But it's an extra vowel sound and the kids are usually taught to memorize it. Now, when they just look at that and they're like, boy, they memorized it's boy. When they see these words, they don't know what to do with it because they've only memorized these 3 as boy. But when you teach them the individual sounds, now they know, he knows that it's boy, right? So when they come across this word, they know it's koi, roy. There's no point in teaching them to memorize that word when you can just teach them when they're ready, oi, b, and then they'll know these. So you don't really have to teach them to memorize. Truck is another commonly memorized word. Again, this one can be broken down. K, right? So they can break that down instead of just memorizing it. Now, when they see these words, luck, puck, they can break it down. They can decode these words on their own, as opposed to memorizing that and then just being clueless when they see these words. Obviously, there are some words you have to memorize because they don't follow any rules and you have to memorize them. Like this, you might think it follows rules, but that's a z instead of a s. Same with is. So take these books, for instance. Phonics, it says. This is actually, this entire set of books is meant for very, very, very beginning new readers, right? It says phonics. You think you're getting phonics. But now keep in mind, they're learning the sounds of the letters, b, k, d, right? And they're just blending and they only know short vowels, ideally. Ideally, they're only learning one vowel at a time, right? You just open up this book and this is number 4 in the phonics series, right? Look at this. You get the word everything, captain, the name writer. So what they do is throughout the book, they use those big words over and over and over again, just repetition. You're not learning the individual sounds. You're not learning how to decode the word yourself. You're just learning how to memorize that word. That's not phonics. It says phonics, it's not phonics. Some of these are very tricky. You just have to watch for it. If they're giving you big words that the child can't possibly know, you know that the kid is expected to memorize it. That's not phonics. So sure, some of these words can eventually, as the child learns more letters and letter combinations that make specific sounds, sure, they can decode some of these, captain, needs, help, right? But for right now, they're just too hard for the level that they're at, and the child has no choice but to memorize these words. Another thing to keep in mind is when they're nice and simple, like I've heard some people comment like, oh, the child needs to be challenged. Well, nobody needs to be challenged that much. That's just too much. When they're just learning words like this and then you give them a word like everything, that just defeats the child right out of the gate. But if you give them things that they can actually sound out on their own, it's so exciting, and they can read it and they're like, oh, and then they're, excited about doing more and learning more. And that's what you want. You want the child excited about learning more and being able to do it himself. Follow for more teaching tips.